The next step beyond using the move tool to just simply move a layer around within your canvas is to actually change the size or the position or the actual rotation of the layer. Once again, in comparison to the navigation tool, this actually changes the image, not just your view. In Edit, Transform, you'll see all of these different options in here, and we're just going to start with the basic one, which is Free Transform. Free Transform gives you access to all of those different types of transformations that you saw in the drop-down menu, and I'm going to show you how to use that with modifier keys and show you how you can also access those by going directly to one of them in the Transform menu. Now, once again, if your layer is not named Layer 0 or something else, if it's still named Background, Transform is going to be grayed out. Once you activate Transform on a layer, you're basically in Transform world, and Photoshop is waiting for you to adjust before you start working in other manipulations of the image. Like, notice everything's now grayed out because you're in Transform world. Immediately you'll notice that we have these little boxes on different parts of the edge of the layer. And what those allow us to do is to grab and change the scale of the image. I'm not holding down any keys right now. I just simply grabbed that corner box and notice that it's constraining the aspect ratio of the image automatically. These are settings that can also be changed with preferences, but right now, I don't have to do anything to preserve the aspect ratio of the image. So every one of these boxes right now is going to change the entire scale of the image. Now, a really important thing to keep in mind when you're changing the scale of elements within your image, if you're changing the size of your photograph, is these are permanent changes that are made to the actual pixel dimensions of the image that you're working with. So when I scale this picture down, there are only a certain number of pixels in that image, in that layer, that show me the photograph. So when I scale that down, I'm actually reducing the number of pixels that are in the layer. In that case, because we always want to work as non-destructively as possible, we don't want to eliminate any information in our image because later we may need to use that information to maybe scale it up, maybe adjust colors, anything like that. It's really important before you start really manipulating the image a lot is to back up your work. So I just hit Escape to exit Transform. And with my layer selected, I'm going to go into the Layers drop-down menu and duplicate my layer. You don't need to change any of these settings in here to duplicate your layer, just hit OK. And notice that it duplicates it above the existing layer. Turn that off by clicking the eye icon. And now, Command T to go back into Free Transform. I can change the size of that layer, and that's a permanent manipulation of that layer, but I have a backup here. And you can see them both here if I drag the backed up layer behind the one that I changed the size of. So now I can always go back if I need to. So I want to demonstrate really quickly what happens to an image when we scale it down and then scale it back up. You'll be able to actually see the degradation that happens to the image. So I'm going to scale it down even more so that this becomes really apparent. Now it's tiny. By hitting Enter and setting that transform I just did, I've committed to that size. I've reduced the number of pixels in that layer. I can zoom in to 100% by hitting Command 1. And notice down here in the left-hand corner, it shows me the zoom scale that I'm at right now, and that's 100%. So if I reduce that, it shows me I'm at 66. Go back in by hitting Command plus, I'm at 100. What I'm going to do is go back into Transform by hitting Command T. I'm on my reduced size layer. I'm going to scale it all the way back up. Notice what's happening to the pixels there. This is a preview, so it's not really an accurate rendering of what the final product is going to be, because when I scale this layer back up, is going to do some calculations to try to repair the pixels from the transformation. So I'm going to hit enter and notice that it changes. Looks okay here, but let's zoom in to 100% again. Look how blurry the image is now. And just to compare, I'm going to go back and forth between my backed up layer and the one that was just manipulated. Look at the difference. So that shows you what happens when you scale something down and scale it back up. You've essentially lost information in your photograph. When you do that, Photoshop is pretty smart at trying to repair that stuff, but keep in mind that there's always going to be a loss of quality that's going to usually result in a blurred image. That's not desirable. We always want to work in a non-destructive way as much as we can. So backing stuff up, keeping this in mind, that's a great workflow. So under transform, you'll remember that there were all those different types of transforms we can do. I'm just going to run through those real quick. I'm going to zoom out so that we can see the full frame. In Edit, Transform, Scale, that will only scale the image proportionately. Now, if I change that to rotate, notice the shape of the arrow has changed to show us that we're in rotate mode. And all this mode is going to do is rotate the actual image. Once again, we're not rotating our view, we're rotating the layer. If I go into skew, this will allow me only to skew the shape of the layer. And I can do that both vertically and horizontally, and I can also move these corners to change the shape of the image disproportionately. In Transform, Distort, now this allows me to access all of the variables in Transform. Now I'm going to hit Escape here because I want to show you perspective. This can be useful for changing the perspective of a layer so it looks like it's going back into space. I'll show you exactly what it looks like. Edit, Transform, Perspective. We have the same transform handles here, but when I grab one, it knows that I want to manipulate that image in a very particular way. Imagine if you're trying to lay down like an asphalt texture on a composite that you're making for a road. You can drop that in, use perspective warp, and it will automatically help you make it look like that texture is going back into space in one-point perspective. So the final and probably most powerful feature in the whole transform tool set is called warp. So I'm going to escape out of here, go back into transform by hitting Command T and choosing warp. This can be a little confusing because warp brings you from transform zone into one deeper level that's like warp zone. Once we're in here, it changes the way our entire transform tool set looks. So you'll see there are little dots here on the sides. So those boxes that we had previously have now changed to dots, and there's a grid here. And these are different controls than transform. So you can see all the major transformations that I'm able to make now. I'm no longer bound by an entire box in order to make manipulations to the image. I'm able to really change it in a more organic and less rigid way. I can always go back into free transform after applying a warp and notice that the previous transform controls are now back up, and I can manipulate that while preserving the aspect ratio of the image overall even after I've warped it. So that's a lot to digest with all the different variables within the transform tool set. Just start messing around with it, use transform in a really basic way, and you'll get more and more comfortable, and just build upon the complexity. Try a new thing each time you use it, eventually make it back into warp, but just know at a very basic level, you can always go to transform to change the size of a layer.